Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Rajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Rajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Om Shripad Paramahamsa Prabhupada Ashtotra Srimad Divine Graces Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishwapada Paramahamsa Prabhupada Ashtotra Srimad Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai All Gurus assembled devotees Hare Krishna All Gurus assembled devotees Hare Krishna All Gurus assembled devotees Hare Krishna All glories, all glories, all glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Gaur Hari Hari Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamutiraye Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Ruttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nandagopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, chapter 17, entitled Mother Parvati curses Chitraketu, verse 19, and we'll also cover 20. For some inconceivable arrangements, we'll read 2 verses. Naivatmana paraschapi karta syat sukha dukkhayo kartaram manyate atragya kartaram manyate atragya atmanam paramevacha naivatmana paraschapi karta syat sukha dukkhayo kartaram manyate atragya atmanam paramevacha naivatmana paraschapi karta syat sukha dukkhayo kartaram manyate atragya atmanam paramevacha. Karta syat sukha dukkhayo kartaram manyate atragya atmanam paramevacha naivatmana paraschapi karta syat sukha dukkhayo kartaram manyate atragya atmanam paramevacha naivatmana paraschapi karta syat sukha dukkhayo kartaram manyate atragya atmanam paramevacha naivatmana paraschapi karta syat sukha dukkhayo kartaram manyate atragya atmanam paramevacha. Matajis. Naivatmana paraschapi karta syat sukha dukkhayo kartaram manyate atragya atmanam paramevacha. Na, not. Eva, indeed. Atma, the spirit soul. Na, nor. Paraha, another, friend or enemy. Cha, also. Api, indeed. Karta, the doer. Syat, can be. Sukha dukkhayo, of happiness and distress. Kartaram, the doer. Manyate, considers. Atra, in this connection. Agya, a person, not aware of the real fact. Atmanam, himself. Param, another. Eva, indeed. Cha, also. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. In this material world, neither the living entity himself, nor others, friends and enemies, are the cause of material happiness and distress. But because of gross ignorance, the living entity thinks that he and others are the cause. Purport. In this verse, the word agya is very significant. In the material world, all living entities are agya, ignorant, in different degrees. This ignorance continues very strongly in the mode of ignorance presented by material nature. One must therefore promote himself to the stage of goodness through his character and behavior, and then gradually come to the transcendental platform or adhokshaja platform, in which he realizes both his position and the position of others. Everything is done under the superintendence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The process by which the results of action are ordained is called niyatam, always working. We'll also read the verse 20, translation and purport. Verse 20, translation. This material world resembles the waves of a constantly flowing river. Therefore, what is a curse and what is a favor? What are the heavenly planets and what are the hellish planets? What is actually happiness and what is actually distress? Because the waves flow constantly, none of them has an eternal effect. Purport. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur sings, Che, Mayar Vashe, Yacho Veshe, Khacho Habu, Dubobai. My dear living entities within this material world, why are you being carried away by the waves of the modes of material nature? Jiva Krishna Das, E Vishwas, Karle Tovar, Dukhonai. If the living entity tries to understand that he is an eternal servant of Krishna, there will no longer be misery for him. Krishna wants us to give up all other engagements and surrender unto him. If we do so, where will the cause and effect of this material world be? There is nothing like cause and effect for the surrendered soul. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says in this regard that being put into this material world is like being thrown into a mine of salt. If one falls into a mine of salt, he tastes only salt wherever he goes. Similarly, this material world is full of miseries. The so-called temporary happiness of this material world is also misery. But in ignorance, we cannot understand this. That is the actual position. When one comes to his senses, when he becomes Krishna conscious, he is no longer concerned with the various conditions of this material world. He is not concerned with happiness or distress, curses or favors, or heavenly or hellish planets. He sees no distinction between them. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Shwa Padantikam Vandeham Shri Gurum Shri Uta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Vishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Niti Namine Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhobhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gauratvashe Namaha Panchatattvaatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhano Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Seeking the blessings of all Vaishnavas to be able to speak something on this the verses of Srimad Bhagavatam. So today we will see something from the purports, the fascinating Bhaktivedanta purports, and remaining time we will also spend some time reflecting. Basically, one part is reflecting the fascinating Bhaktivedanta purports, a 360-degree feedback, multiple angles which Srila Prabhupada gives in his purports about this particular incident. And we will also spend some time reflecting about the amazing characteristics and the nature of Sripad Ramanujacharya on the account of his disappearance day. So we'll spend time on both. Talking about the Bhaktivedanta purports, the scene is apparently like in the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's one picture. Lord Shiva is giving Srimad Bhagavatam class. There is an assembly of sages. Mother Parvati is sitting on his lap, and from the top, Chitraketu Maharaj is on his airplane looking at this particular scene. It's just, captured just in one picture. But how many pages and pages of commentaries over what is happening. In the modern times, people want more action in terms of what is the next scene, what is the next scene. Here it's just a static, just one picture, and there is so much churning happening. And fortunately, this churning is this not like the material gossip. This churning is the commentaries of the which is presented so wonderfully to give a holistic 360-degree feedback. Because from an ordinary perspective, Prabhupada himself writes in the purport that Prabhupada mentions about this, that Chitraketu's purpose in criticizing Lord Shiva is somewhat mysterious. His purpose in criticizing Lord Shiva is somewhat and is not to be understood by a common man. Because every person might give a different opinion. Yes, Chitraketu was right. No, Chitraketu committed a mistake. Somebody might say Parvati was right. Somebody might say, no, Parvati also made a mistake. Somebody might say Lord Shiva was right. And somebody might say, why did Lord Shiva not speak anything? Why was he silent? So practically anyone may want to give his opinions, but when we hear from the acharyas, it just gives us this 360-degree feedback of such a fascinating purport. That means it's not so easy to put it black and white. He's just right and he's just wrong. Just putting it in one basket. There are some aspects which are from the positive aspects. There are certain characteristics which also talk about the negative aspects, which from a sadhaka's perspective, we have to see it as what are the lessons for us. Rather than commenting about whether Chitraketu was right, whether Parvati was right, whether Lord Shiva was right, rather than getting into those nitty-gritties, we can learn in case there are any lessons for us from these so-called apparently negative aspects. What is it that we can learn as a sadhaka? But definitely there is so much positives that is present in this. So as we discussed, the scene is very static. This Vidyadharas, his Chitraketu Maharaj is in the airplane, flying in the airplane with the woman of Vidyadhar Loka. And from the top, he is seeing this beautiful scene, Lord Shiva speaking to an assembly of sages while Mother Parvati is sitting on his lap. So there are multiple perspectives but based on which he expressed his wonder. On one side, it is mentioned that he just expressed his wonder. He expressed his appreciation for how wonderful this is, this particular scene is. And as we are discussing that without the purports, without the commentary, it's so easy to get swayed away, to kind of commit oneself to think he was actually right, he was not right, to get a little paralysis in terms of what actually is happening here. Is he really right or not? So Prabhupada, when he explains, so if you see the sort of positives, first and foremost, Chitraketu Maharaj had already got darshan of Lord Sankarshan prior to this. And now, while he is traveling with the beautiful denizens of Vidyadhar Loka, he is actually glorifying the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even in the presence of beautiful woman, he is chanting the holy names of the Lord. So Prabhupada says this is a great positive aspect, characteristic on the part of Chitraketu Maharaj. And right in the beginning, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments that this whole episode is plan of the Lord. Lord wanted Chitraketu to come back soon to Vaikuntha. So there has to be some event happening based on, just like we see about Parikshit Maharaj. Jai Shri Shri Radha Vrindavan Chandra Bhagavan ki Jai, Shri Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maiya ki Jai, Shri Shri Gauranitai ki Jai, Shri Prabhupada ki Jai. Just as we see Parikshit Maharaj being cursed, there is a plan of the Lord in terms of how Srimad Bhagavatam is to be unfolded. Similarly here, Lord Vishnu is having a plan for Chitraketu to come back, and this event is apparently happening. Or even in the case of, say, Jay and Vijay, there is so much from different angles we can try to argue whether again Jay Vijay were right. Ultimately they were doorkeepers. It's their duty to stop somebody who is not qualified to enter. All that we can talk about and churn, but at the same time, simultaneously, this is plan of the Lord. Similarly, in this case, it was a plan of the Lord for Chitraketu to come back to Vaikuntha soon. So what is eventually happening is Mother Parvati is cursing him to become a demon, Vritrasur, next life. After Vritrasur, then he's able to go back home, back to Godhead. This is Prabhupada is stressing on this. Another aspect is that Chitraketu appreciated how Lord Shiva is speaking to a assembly of renunciates while Mother Parvati is sitting on his lap. He was sort of expressing his wonder. So this is actually appreciation. It was not a criticism. He was appreciating, first of all, the assembly's sages, renowned sages. And to them, he's talking about renunciation while having Mother Parvati on his lap. That means Chitraketu is expressing his wonder how renounced Lord Shiva is, that he is unaffected by Mother Parvati sitting on his lap. And even the assembly of sages is able to take this sermon so easily. So he was expressing the appreciation for Lord Shiva. This is another aspect which Prabhupada explains. Another thing is that Lord Shiva himself understood Chitraketu's intentions. He himself remained silent. He just smiled. He did not comment anything on this. Lord Shiva understood the purpose of Chitraketu, and on a personal level, he did not express anything. He just remained silent. He just smiled. Prabhupada further mentions that the assembly of sages also understood the purpose of Lord Shiva and simultaneously understood the purpose of Chitraketu, and following their master, Lord Shiva is silent, and they also remained silent. So Prabhupada mentions in the purport that in case the assembly of sages felt that Chitraketu was wrong in his actions, they would have, of course, one way is you have an argument with it, and otherwise you just leave the place, block your ears and leave the place. It may so happen that Lord Shiva doesn't mind even if there was a criticism or an insult. As a great soul does not take anything on himself. But a follower or the disciples, for they should be more concerned if my master is being criticized. So if the assembly of sages would have felt that Chitraketu is doing a grave mistake, they would have actually left, blocking their ears. From this perspective also, it seems as if Chitraketu did not commit a mistake. So this is how Prabhupada, in his various different purports, trying to explain from the various different angles. Another very important aspect is Chitraketu was considering that Lord Shiva is also a great Mahajan. As a great soul, if he commits some act, which people may follow in the future, which will be a sort of a blemish on Lord Shiva. So Chitraketu wanted to avoid this scenario so that Lord Shiva will not be blemished, Lord Shiva's name will not be tarnished in the future. for committing such an act. So he's expressing his wonder and sort of stopping that particular incident to continue further. So he's putting an interruption in this particular case. So these are certain aspects which Prabhupada explains that these are certain positives from the angle of Chitraketu. Simultaneously, for a sadhaka to learn what are the negative aspects that one has to be refraining from. One of the most important thing is that which we can reflect in our life is avoid commenting loosely. Avoid commenting loosely about someone in their absence. Avoid commenting loosely about someone in their absence. In this case, it is in the presence, but it's more broader perspective. Especially in their absence, it's even more worst. Even if it is in their presence, loosely should be avoided. Commenting can be avoided, and in absence. This is something, a great lesson that we learn. Obviously, not easy to practice, but especially when we stay in a community of Vaishnavas, when we stay closely knit, surrounded with people, Vaishnavas, then it's very natural that we keep seeing, good things as well as faults, and to not comment, that requires some level of tolerance. It requires some level of maturity to be not able to be quick in giving some comments. Nowadays, any event happens, like the news reporters channels there, what is your opinion? What do you think about this? Whether man lands in moon or a match is won or anything happens, what is your comment about this? So people generally feel we can comment anything about anyone and get away with it. No. So from this particular episode, what we particularly see is, avoid commenting loosely about anyone, especially in their absence. And from the perspective of sadhakas to learn from the purpose of Srila Prabhupada here is Prabhupada is expressing that Chitraketu never meant to offend Lord Shiva. At the same time, he should not have criticized Lord Shiva. He did not intend, as we generally, we try to justify ourselves with our intent. For others, we see actions, and for ourselves, we see intent. So Chitraketu Maharaj is basically, his intention is not to offend Lord Shiva. But Prabhupada says, he still should not have criticized Lord Shiva. Why? Because Teji Asam na doshaya. One who is very powerful, should not be, one should not try to find fault in someone who is very powerful. Just like when the sun is evaporating the urine, sun is not getting contaminated. But somebody might see a fault. Oh, just see, even urine is getting evaporated by sun is coming in contact with the urine. No, but somebody who is very powerful, an ordinary person should not end up finding fault in someone who is very powerful. And Prabhupada goes further to say that that an ordinary person should refrain from commenting about a very powerful person. In the modern times, people feel the more we comment about powerful people, the more famous one becomes. Just by commenting about famous people, more powerful people, I'm able to find certain things from the more powerful things. So Prabhupada says that means even to comment, one needs certain qualifications. Even to give one's opinions, one needs certain qualifications, whether one is well versed with the particular incident, and whether one has the right understanding, whether one is authorized to comment about certain aspects. This is one very beautiful lesson that we learn. And another aspect which definitely is very crucial from the devotee perspective is that because Chitraketu Maharaj had got darshan of Lord Sankarshan, Prabhupada explains that there is a tinge of pride that creeps in. Now that I have got darshan of Lord Sankarshan, now I have a license to criticize even Lord Shiva. So this is something which one has to be refrained from. Even from Lord Shiva's, even from the lives of various personalities, we can see that like Bharat Maharaj, even at the stage of Bhava, there is a potential to glide down. There is a potential to go up. But even at that stage, one has to be conscious, cautious, and careful. Even at that powerful stage. Similarly, here, even after having got darshan of Sankarshan, that does not mean having darshan of Lord Vishnu does not give one a license to criticize great souls. What to speak of when we have not yet got darshan? How much one has to be much more cautious about. And another final lesson which Srila Prabhupada mentions about in this case of Chitraketu is that he considered himself to be a better controller of senses than Lord Shiva himself. Lord Shiva is considered actually a Dhira. He is considered to be an epitome of from the renunciation perspective as well. But Chitraketu is getting swayed away just now that he has got darshan of Lord Sankarshan, and now he is thinking, he is contemplating that he is a better controller of his senses rather than Lord Shiva. So these are certain negative aspects or characteristics which we may see from the life of Chitraketu and be cautious and careful about. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada in 19th and 20th, both of these aspects which Srila Prabhupada is talking about, as how a great soul is not concerned about being in the heavenly planets or being in the hellish planets. He's not concerned whether he's getting a curse, whether he's getting a blessing, it's happiness, distress, and all this. So, just like we see here in the case of Chitraketu, after this expressing his wonder, Mother Parvati is pronouncing the curse, saying that, you will become a demon in your next life, Vitrasur, so that you will not continue to offend Lord Shiva. But the response of Chitraketu, how does he receive it? He immediately comes down on the plane from the plane and offers his obeisances to Mother Parvati and accepts it very wholeheartedly, although he himself had the power to retaliate as well. He accepts it wholeheartedly. So this is a beautiful characteristic of a Vaishnava, where Tiraskrita Vipralabdha Shakta Shapta Hata Api is able to accept that he's not retaliating in terms of why I have been cursed. I actually was not at fault. So if we really get into the analysis of it, whether was I right because of which I was cursed? Was I wrong because of which I was cursed? Even if I am right, still I am getting cursed. Should I accept that or should I retaliate? So all this, there can be so many things which can be going on, churning in the mind. But Chitraketu Maharaj simply accepted that considering this as the plan of the Lord, I took it forward. So this characteristic is so very amazing to see. It's a magnanimous character. He's not bothered about, because Lord Shiva himself going to praise Chitraketu further in the further verses, Narayana Parasarve, Nakutoshana Bibhyati. Swarga Apavarga Apatulyartha Darshana. Whether it's heavenly planets or hellish planets, they don't care about it. That's how we can see from the life of Sripad Ramanujacharya, when Mahapurna had instructed him to approach Goshti Purna to receive a mantra. He said that I have not seen a greater Vaishnava than Goshti Purna. This is Mahapurna is one of the prominent spiritual masters of Sripad Ramanujacharya, and is directing him to receive a mantra from Goshti Purna, which happens to be in Tirukoštiyur, quite away from Sri Rangam. While this is the time when Sripad Ramanujacharya was staying in Sri Rangam. From there, he is traveling all the way to Tirukoštiyur, and obviously those times it is walk. So long distance of walking, approaching Goshti Purna and requesting him for the mantra that I have been sent by Mahapurna, and I eagerly am waiting to receive this mantra from you, mantra diksha from you. Whereas Goshti Purna tried to casually, evade him, saying this mantra is to be given only to someone who is very pure in his heart. They should not touch the lips of anyone who has any material contamination. They should not be heard by anyone who has any material contamination. So saying like this, he just tries to avoid. And it is being described that eventually almost about 18 times he was rejected. 18 times traveling, very similar to our Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur approaching Gaur Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj. 18 times being rejected after this travel journey. So at one point of time, Sripad Ramanujacharya really felt, because Goshtipurna is not, probably Goshtipurna is seeing a lot of material contamination in me, and I'm not even qualified to receive this mantra. What is the use of my life? He's in that zone where he's contemplating very, very strongly. And this news is reported to Goshtipurna. Simultaneously, from the temple priest, he also gets as if he gets a message from the Lord, and as if he is speaking on behalf of the Lord, saying that actually Ramanujacharya is very pure, and Goshtipurna should be giving this mantra to Sripad Ramanujacharya. This message was also relayed by the temple priest. So when this message was relayed, and to see that Ramanujacharya was in a very repentance mode, in spite of approaching for 18 times, to see that at that point of time, Goshtipurna, his heart melts and he says, yes, now I'll be giving you this particular mantra. So when he gives this mantra, of course, he naturally cautions, saying that this is only to be heard by those who have no tinge of material contamination. And he obviously wants not to give this to anyone. It's to be maintained secret. And after receiving this mantra, Ramanujacharya is so grateful to receive this mantra. Eventually, the moment he is going out, his heart is filled with compassion to see, how much suffering is there in this material world. Like in the purport, Prabhupada explains, it's like a salt. It's like a salt mine. If somebody just lands in a salt mine, what he will see? Only salt around. Similarly, this material world is dukkha alai. It's a place of miseries. At the same time, of course, not to get too pessimistic about it, dukkha alai asashvatam. The hope-giving part is, it's not eternal. It is not. In fact, this particular 20th verse translation itself mentions that this material world resembles the waves of constantly flowing river. It's not that, this dukkha only eternally. It's constantly flow. Even if it is dukkha, at one point of time, again, it will be replaced with sukha. And sukha is also not constant and permanent. It's again going to be replaced. It's a constant flow. So Sripad Ramanujacharya, when he is seeing the people outside suffering so much compassion arouses in his heart, and he makes a plan of giving this mantra to everyone, climbing the top place in the temple area of Tirukoštiyur. He's inviting all the residents and inviting them and saying that if anyone wants to get liberated, please assemble here. So all the villagers get assembled in this particular place, and very loudly, he's revealing this mantra. Om Namo Narayanaya. Om Namo Narayanaya. Om Namo Narayana. And he's revealing this mantra. This is also being heard by Goshtipurna at a far off distance. What is this? Just moments before, I have informed that this should not be heard by anyone who has any material contamination. And in moments, completely defying the order of the spiritual master. Goshtipurna was in such a rage. He was like, he just didn't want to see the face of Ramanujacharya. And by this time, Ramanujacharya, along with 2 disciples, he goes to meet Goshtipurna. Like we see our Narad Muni going to meet Daksha after Haryashvas and Shavanasvas, again has the courage to go and meet Daksha and have a discussion. Similarly, Ramanujacharya here is coming to Goshtipurna and offering obeisances. Goshtipurna says, I don't even want to see your face. Just now I gave you this mantra and you have completely disobeyed me. And Sripad Ramanujacharya is explaining that, I am pretty sure for the offense that I have committed of disobeying you, I am going to go to hellish planets eternally. But the mantra that you have given, which has emanated from your lips, is so pure that because of that, all the people, residents here who have heard this mantra, will get liberated. If one insignificant person has to go to hell, and in return, if all these people are going to get liberated, what is the loss? So when Goshtipurna hears this, he offers obeisances to Ramanujacharya and says, "You are my spiritual master." Like our Mukunda and Raghunanda, who is father and who is son. Here Goshtipurna is offering obeisances and saying, "You are my spiritual master." Of course, Ramanujacharya expresses his humility and says, the potency of the mantra is increased because it has emanated from your lips. You are my spiritual master, and he offers obeisances. So that's a natural response of a devotee, where he's expressing that I don't mind going to the hellish planet for the benefit that people will get. So this is the compassionate heart of a devotee. Especially also in verse 19 in the purport, Prabhupada explains, one must therefore promote himself to the stage of goodness through the character and behavior, and then gradually come to the transcendental platform or Adokshaja platform. So promoting himself to the stage of goodness, and of course transcending from goodness as well. Basically, the character and the behavior reflects the stature of a devotee. The devotee's maturity, paripakvata, based on his character and behavior. Similarly, in another beautiful episode, we can see, this is again in Srirangam, one of the high priests of Srirangam he had developed some enviousness towards Sripad Ramanujacharya, and sort of power game. He felt, my position is at threat because of Sripad Ramanujacharya's increasing fame. He wanted to be the top priest. So, having that envious attitude, he devised some plans. So, Sripad Ramanujacharya would be going to different houses to beg for alms, madhukari. Typically, like 7 houses, different houses he would go. So, one day, this high priest of the temple, he invites Sripad Ramanujacharya, saying that you can come to my house to beg for alms. I'm inviting you for the alms. And meanwhile, he goes to his home and informs his wife that today Sripad Ramanujacharya is going to arrive here and ensure that the food that you give him, the alms that you give him, is mixed with poison. And by the way, you know where the poison is. And he tells his wife. His wife also was of the similar Tulya Shilaya, was also similar pattern. And she accepted that. And when Sripad Ramanujacharya comes to beg for alms, so up till now, even the wife of the high priest had been of the opinion that she wanted to assist her husband, and give that poisoned food to Ramanujacharya. But the moment Ramanujacharya arrives, looking at his effulgence, or being in the presence of the pure devotee, this lady melts. She's shivering. She is not able to actually give the alms. And while coming close, she speaks to Ramanujacharya, saying that you better go to some other house to beg for alms. This food is not suitable for you. This is poisoned food. So, can you imagine the person who has already part of the plan is not able to execute the plan in the presence of such a pure devotee, and she expresses it right in front of Sripad Ramanujacharya. Sripad Ramanujacharya reflects on this. Of course, he leaves the place, and is like literally reflecting. How is it that somebody is so disturbed by my presence? What we can be thinking of? How come, I am the Acharya of this place and somebody is making such a plan? But what is Ramanujacharya's contemplation? He just straight goes to the banks of Kaveri, and fortunately he happens to meet Goshtipurna there, his spiritual master, and he offers obeisances and inquires from him. His inquiry is so beautiful. His inquiry is not, why is it that somebody is devising such a plan? His inquiry is, how can the heart of this high priest be purified? This is the response of a devotee. How can the heart of this high priest get purified? And Goshtipurna says, now that you are contemplating about this, now that you have a eager desire for this in terms of transforming this high priest, surely the Supreme Lord will make an arrangement. And Sripad Ramanujacharya offers obeisances and he leaves. But all the while he's contemplating how this high priest can be transformed, how this high priest's heart can get melted. So he's not contemplating why is he envious, why he wants to kill me, how I can be saved, how I can be protected. His question is how he can be purified. And when this high priest comes to know that his wife has foiled the plan, she could not give that, considering the womanly nature, finally she was not able to give it the poisoned food. Then he is contemplating that, I'll make further plan. Anyway, Ramanujacharya will come to the temple to honor Charanamrit. He will not miss that. So he is mixing poison in the Charanamrit. You can imagine the level of enviousness and the devious plan that he is trying to make. And Ramanujacharya knowingly, goes ahead, and knowing that already he's making this plan, goes ahead and has the Charanamrit, considering it as the blessings of the Supreme Lord. Of course, he can digest it. We can't imitate this. Just like Lord Shiva took poison, he willingly took poison for the benefit of others. But then Sripad Ramanujacharya accepts that and suddenly starts exhibiting some transcendental emotions in the service of the Lord, while this high priest thinks that the poison is having some effect. Just now he's had this Charanamrit and he's going into, while Ramanujacharya was going into ecstasy, transcendental symptoms, he was thinking that now the poison is having an effect. So by tomorrow he will be no more. So he's thinking like this. But the next day morning, he expects that Ramanujacharya will not be alive, but there is a wonderful procession and Ramanujacharya is seated on a high seat where he's actually exhibiting some transcendental symptoms, and the people around him are praising him. Seeing this beautiful, being surrounded by the followers and Ramanujacharya exhibiting these transcendental symptoms, this high priest's heart melts. And literally he, hits his head against the ground, hits his chest against the ground. He becomes so disturbed, agitated, restless, that, and then he goes and begs to Sripad Ramanujacharya, saying that, please do not forgive me, please give me some punishment. This is again, you see the transformation here. He's not going to beg, please forgive me, somehow it happened by mistake. He is going to say that, please give me some punishment. I don't deserve to be forgiven. So these are such transcendental exchange of emotions which happens. But the beauty is, just like as Prabhupada says, one must therefore promote himself to the stage of goodness through the character and behavior. How Ramanujacharya responded when he came to know that there is an attempt to poison him. He is not making an attempt to retaliate, but he's thinking how that person's heart can be purified. So it's such transcendental emotions which is being exhibited here. And since this is the sort of disappearance day of Sripad Ramanujacharya, just quickly we will see some of his wonderful contributions, some final instructions. So, of course, one of the great contributions is Sri Bhashya, the three things, unfulfilled vows, which, from Yamunacharya's fingers. So one of them was Sri Bhashya, when he proclaimed, I will write a commentary on Vedanta Sutra. This will be known as Sri Bhashya. That was a great contribution on the life of Sripad Ramanujacharya. Another was that he was traveling and preaching across, literally, and that's another part of the vow which he gave to Yamunacharya. I'll travel across the length and breadth throughout the India. That's why you'll find right from South India, Srirangam and Kanchipuram, Tirupati, all these places, up till Sharada Peeth, which is Kashmir. Up till Sharada Peeth is practically traveled the length and breadth across India, all the different places, and preached extensively. He has made so many devotees, especially we can say even great impersonalists have been transformed by him. Like if you see from the Sri Sampradaya perspective, Yamunacharya definitely was a very prominent personality, but it was Sripad Ramanujacharya who actually spread this far and wide. Nath Muni also was very prominent. Yamunacharya was very prominent. His verses, even Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Stotra refers to the Stotra Navali. So they have been very prominent. But Sripad Ramanujacharya had the exclusive credit of spreading the Vaishnavism and traveling and preaching and making lots and lots of devotees. Wherever he would travel, he would have debates. Fortunately, in those times when there would be a debate, if somebody gets defeated, they will become disciples. In today's time, people may get defeated and they will still not accept, or they will still remain. They'll still say, "I don't believe in it. I don't accept it." So in those times, debates would happen. They would if they are defeated and they accept this is genuine, then they will accept that this is a better philosophy. Then let me submit my life to this personality. So he had literally made a lot of Vaishnavas. One of his own teacher, Yadav Prakash, himself happened to be a impersonalist. While he was studying in the school, there were a lot of arguments. There would be times when there was arguments in the sense Ramanujacharya is thinking from Vaishnava perspective, whereas Yadav Prakash is presenting from an impersonal perspective. So there would be certain tussles and arguments on that. Eventually, it so happens that his own school teacher as Yadav Prakash eventually becomes disciple of Ramanuja. Isn't it amazing to have one's teacher also become his disciple? Then there were further personalities like Yagya Murthy. It is described that Sripad Ramanujacharya had a 18-day debate. 18 days debate with him continuously. Eventually that person, of course, he also transforms. He also becomes a disciple of Ramanujacharya. Eventually came to be known as Devaraj Muni. 18 days debate. Like we hear about Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. 7 days discussing with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And at the end of it, that Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, from whom even sannyasis would come and hear. Such a great stature at that time, the power that he had. But in the presence of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, eventually he becomes transformed. So that was a 7 days of discussion, not a discussion, we can say monologue that Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya had with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And here we find 18-day debate and it transforms, and these personalities eventually become very prominent in the Sri Sampradaya. Further in the succession, he was one of the personalities was responsible for this Venkatesh Balaji's Shankha and Chakra. And in fact, in today's time also in Tirupati, they believe the Shankha and Chakra are the gifts given by Ramanujacharya to Lord Balaji, Venkateshwar. Because there was a time when it was not clear, for those who must have witnessed this Balaji Mahanatya recently. There was a time when there was a confusion whether this deity is of Lord Vishnu or of Lord Shiva. There was a confusion amongst the villagers. And at that point of time, for 2 weeks, Sripad Ramanujacharya gave sermons, gave discourses explaining that this is Lord Balaji's deity, Venkateshwar Balaji's deity, Lord Vishnu's deity. Literally 2 weeks he was explaining all that. But still, the Shaivites were not able to accept that. And they still were having their own stand. They said that this is Lord Shiva only. So finally, Sripad Ramanujacharya says, let the deity decide. Let the deity decide for himself whether he is Lord Shiva or Lord Vishnu. So they kept 4 articles. Lord Shiva's Trishul and Damru. They kept two articles, and Sripad Ramanujarya himself arranged for the Shankha and Chakra. So these 4 articles were kept in the altar. The doors were locked, high security, Z zone, Z security, with all that closeness. And the whole night, Shaivites were praying Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. And the whole night, the Vaishnavas are praying Om Namo Narayana. They were offering their prayers to Lord Vishnu, hopeful and expecting that next day Mangalarti was filled, the temple hall was filled. All the devotees coming to witness what is going to happen. And when the door opens in the morning, it was revealed by the Lord himself that he is none other than Lord Balaji, Tirupati, Venkateshwar. So this Sripad Ramanujarya has a very prominent role in establishing that this deity is none other than Lord Vishnu himself. It is described that he established 74 centers, and he had about 700, preached to about 700 sannyasis. He made sort of 700 sannyasis, about 300, it is described as Kettiyammais. Kettiyammais is like ladies who have sort of dedicated their lives for the Lord, 300 of them. He made 12,000 brahmacharis. 700 sannyasis, 12,000 brahmacharis, and thousands of householders, including kings and landowners. There is a lot of events which happened in which practically the kings get transformed and become his disciple and agree to transform the entire state, entire kingdom. They want to give, saying that let Sri Vaishnavism spread like this. So very, very prominent personality, very prominent figure. And just finally, some of the last instructions that he gave, also which we basically, when we see what we have taken from the Sri Sampradaya, the 8 different principles which Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has taken. So two from each of the Sampradayas, Sri Sampradaya, Rudra Sampradaya, Kumar Sampradaya, and Brahma Sampradaya. So from the Sri Sampradaya, the prominent aspect is pure unalloyed devotional service. Pure unalloyed devotional service. This aspect is taken from Sri Sampradaya here. And another aspect is worship. Another aspect is the service attitude. Service to Vaishnavas. Vaishnava Seva. This aspect is particularly taken from Sri Vaishnavism here. So he would actually say in one of his last instructions that worship other Vaishnavas as if you worship your own spiritual master. If we follow this standard, this will be Vaikuntha, isn't it? If we even think about that, if worship Vaishnavas as if you worship your spiritual master. Of course, chant the holy names of the Lord constantly, worship Lord Ranganath. He also did speak to his disciples about worshipping Lord Ranganath and living cooperatively amongst the Vaishnavas. And let that be your happiness. So it's basically a life centered around the deities, worshipping Ranganath, and simultaneously live cooperatively amongst the Vaishnavas. Let that be your happiness. So this is some beautiful teachings that he gave. He lived for about, in this material world, for about 120 years. And of which about 60 years he spent in Sri Rangam. 60 years of his life practically spent in Sri Rangam. So great personality, and we are very indebted to this Acharya as Sripad Ramanujacharya for his great contributions. And of course, literary contributions are there, making devotees are there, making centers, all that is there. At the same time, he had multiple spiritual masters in the form of Yamunacharya, in the form of Mahapurna, in the form of Goshti Purna, Maladhar, Vararanga. So this is not that he was a new devotee, so he approached somebody to get a spiritual master. When he's approaching Goshti Purna that we discussed now, he was already a sannyasi. After which he is approaching Goshti Purna for receiving the mantra. So, which basically shows learning never stops. He's constantly getting more and more transcendental knowledge to benefit uh, the world actually as such. And of course, what to speak of Srila Prabhupada, he in a similar way accepted whether it is hell or heaven, what kind of situations that he went through. For a person who can be completely satisfied sitting in Vrindavan, writing the Bhaktivedanta purports peacefully, for such a personality at the age of 70 to go to Bowery, New York, and take up so much hardships, and to have in the process, in the journey, having 2 heart attacks is not an easy task, which basically goes to show how our Srila Prabhupada has transcended this platform where he's not bothered about whether it's a hellish condition or it's a heavenly condition, whether it's a distress, whether it is happiness. And what to speak of the characteristics, what to speak of the goodness and the transcendental characteristics that Srila Prabhupada exhibited in terms of establishing the movement, in terms of dealing with his own disciples, in terms of dealing with his god brothers. And so much, living in this material world is not easy for anyone, including acharyas. What to speak of acharyas, including the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even when the Supreme Lord comes in this material world, this material world is still a salt mine. This material world is still Dukhalaya. So even when the acharyas come, of course, not that they are affected by it, but they, that's the environment around. So even acharyas go through such a difficult phases in their lives, but the beauty is how they respond. Their response is, as they say, odd man out. This stands out. Their response stands out. The ordinary person, how they respond is a very common, either cribbing, complaining, whining, and all that. But the way the acharyas respond is something which makes them stand out of the crowd. And our Srila Prabhupada himself has established such wonderful centers, created so many Vaishnavas. So this is following in the footsteps of the acharyas. They are actually wanting to spread the message of Godhead. Their sole happiness is how to chant the holy names, how to make people Krishna conscious, and how to spread these holy names around. That itself gives them great joy. They are happy that this movement is spreading around. So the more the representatives, more the authorized representatives, the more the movement will spread around. And that's a great glory. So thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Anybody has any comments or any question? Yes, Prabhu.
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took two principles from Sri Vaishnava also, and two from Madhvacharya also. There also they say that deity worship and Mayavad Khandana. So here also deity worship.
No, it's not deity worship. It is, one is about Vaishnava Seva.
One is that. Another
other is pure devotional service,
okay,
which is untinged by the contamination of materialism. Bhakti, which is pure devotion, Ananya Bhakti, we can say. So Ananya Bhakti and Vaishnava Seva.
Okay.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Sripad Ramanujacharya ki jai. Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.